Welcome to I Created SIV. Imagine video that doesn't just play, but actually responds. Imagine stories that shift, adapt, and change because you nudge them in a different direction. This is the true story of how one pub conversation grew into Selective Interactive Video, SIV, a new kind of video that lets audiences shape what they see, uncover hidden content, and experience stories in ways traditional media can't touch. But this book isn't just about inventing a technology. It's about fighting for creativity in a world drifting toward automation. It's about proving that artists still matter, that audiences want more than algorithms, and that innovation can come from anyone bold enough to ask, why not? Inside, you'll hear how SIV was built, where it's being used, the unexpected breakthroughs, the spectacular mistakes, and why interactive storytelling might just be the future of video. If you've ever wondered how new ideas are born, or what it takes to actually make one work, you're in the right place. Settle in and enjoy I Created SIV by David Jones.
Preface. I'm David Jones, founder of 2B Acting, a digital media and theatre production company specializing in selective interactive video. In short, we innovate with video to create new opportunities for artists in both business and entertainment. Our latest project, Jim BS, the world's first 360 degrees interactive video sitcom, with in-show advertising, is more than a show, it's a blueprint for a new funding model for the arts. If it catches on, it could change everything. Before all this, I spent 37 years in the electricity supply industry, armed with a master's degree in power system engineering from Bath University, managing multi-million-pound construction projects. Yes, from power grids to interactive video. There's a logic to it, somewhere. Creatively, I hold a Business and Technology Education Council (BTEC) certificate in performing arts, have written and sold books on Amazon, written and produced 6 plays, supported by Arts Council England and others, and had my productions performed on stages across Yorkshire. In governance, I completed the ITC Board Development Programme, helped establish Sustained Theatre Artist Yorkshire, STAY, supporting diversity in the arts, eventually becoming its chair, served 8 years on the board at Leeds Playhouse, leading on diversity and inclusion, and now serve on the board of the Northern School of Contemporary Dance, contributing to finance, EDI and development. From the beginning, 2B Acting was driven by a simple idea. If we wanted a better future for artists, we had to do things differently and often be the first to try. Since 2005, this approach has shaped everything from our early digital theatre experiments to the development of Selective Interactive Video, SIV, created in 2014 to merge storytelling with audience choice. Along the way we pioneered one of the first web drama series, the first entertainment video apps and digital projection stage productions, each proving that innovation can open doors to paid opportunities, new audiences, and fresh ways to fund the arts. So yes, the CV looks respectable and our passion to support creativity and artists cannot be questioned, but the real story begins somewhere far less laudable, a pub, a pint, and a TV I couldn't hear. I remember very clearly when what turned into a lifelong obsession first began, way back in June 2014. I was sitting in my local, staring at the silent TV screen while enjoying a cool pint of the black stuff, wondering why, with all our supposed technology, I couldn't simply tune my mobile into the audio. Why couldn't I just plug in my earphones and listen privately? No disturbance. No subtitles. No shouting, "What did he just say?" across the table. That one annoyance sparked a debate with my drinking partners. Why doesn't video let us control anything? Why can't we influence the story? Why can't we stop a character from doing something painfully stupid? Why can't we be surprised by a genuinely different ending? I failed to convince anyone. The pub consensus was that the idea sounded too fantastical and, if it ever did happen, the big guys would be the ones to make it. But to me it wasn't about branching choices or gimmicks like other interactive videos or computer games, it was about creating living content. Stories that adapted. Videos that reacted. Each viewing becoming unique. You wouldn't just watch anymore, you'd experience unpredictable outcomes. It took years, sleepless nights, abandoned prototypes, and more strategy changes than I care to confess, but eventually, we got it right. And along the way we built InView, the first platform where audiences could experience what I called Selective Interactive Video, SIV, in action. From there, we proved it could work on stage, in pubs, at events, and essentially anywhere a video can be played. This book isn't a technical manual, though I can't promise to avoid the occasional geeky detour. It's a record, a statement, a blueprint, and maybe even a small rebellion. Because as I write this, there are already people, companies, and algorithms eager to claim the next big creative breakthrough as their own. So let's get this out of the way early. I created SIV. Not because I needed the credit, but because I believe creativity should stay human. And lately, that idea feels like it's under threat. Big tech loves creativity right up until it becomes inconvenient. The same corporations happy to replace musicians with automated playlists and actors with deepfakes now talk about democratizing content creation while quietly removing the creators from the equation. AI doesn't need rest, pay, or copyright, extremely appealing if you view art as content rather than culture. That's why I had to write this book. To ensure the origin of SIV is recorded. To remind people that technology should serve creativity, not own it. To leave something solid behind so that years from now, when the story of Selective Interactive Video is told, the truth isn't overwritten by marketing departments or machine-generated footnotes. This isn't just about invention. It's about legacy. SIV was never designed to replace performers, writers, or artists, it exists to amplify them. To give audiences power without taking it from creators. To prove that technology and humanity can share the stage. So before someone else rewrites history or buries the truth under buzzwords, here it is. How it all began, the lessons learned, and where this technology is heading next. Because every invention is really just a conversation with the future, and I'd like to make sure the future hears the right version of this one. Chapter 1. It seemed obvious. It still surprises me how life can change because of something as ordinary as a silent pub television. There I was, sitting in my local, pint of Guinness in hand, minding my own business and pretending I understood sport, when I realized I could not hear a word the TV was saying. This was hardly unusual. Pub TVs across the country are permanently muted, as if someone decided long ago that football commentary is best enjoyed through lip reading. But on that day, the silence annoyed me more than usual. I looked at the screen, then at the phone in my hand, then back at the screen. With all the technology in the world, why could I not simply tune my phone into the TV audio? Why could I not plug in my earphones and listen quietly while the rest of the pub shouted at the referee? It seemed like the sort of thing humanity should have sorted somewhere between inventing electricity and inventing cat memes. That tiny irritation sparked a much bigger question. If we can send emails to space, why is video still a spectator sport? Why does the story not react to us? Why do we sit back politely while characters make ridiculous decisions that any sensible person would avoid? Why can we not nudge the plot, try something different, or experience an alternative twist? We live in a world where people customize everything from burgers to birth plans, yet video remains as rigid as concrete. I mentioned all this to the friends at my table. They laughed and told me I had clearly had one pint too many. They said stories could not change on the fly and that if such a thing ever existed it would be invented by the big companies, the ones with very serious offices and very serious marketing budgets. In their view, my idea belonged in the same category as teleportation, faithful printers, and politicians who answer questions directly. That conversation should have ended there, but it refused to leave my mind. I kept thinking about what video could become if someone simply stopped obeying the unwritten rule that says, video is passive and must stay that way. A rule, by the way, invented by no one and enforced by everyone. I realized I could either ignore the idea like everyone expected me to, or I could do something catastrophically sensible. I could try. Selective Interactive Video was born from that stubbornness. It was not designed as a toy or a gimmick. It was not meant to be another branching video that stops the story mid-sentence to ask the viewer to pick between two options. It was created to make stories alive. To let video breathe. To allow actors to perform scenes that change depending on what the viewer does, or where they are, or what time it is, or simply what the moment demands. It was created to let audiences experience something new each time instead of the same passive path carved into stone. Explaining this to people back then was like describing music to someone who had never heard a sound. They thought I was inventing teleportation. They compared it to YouTube. They compared it to Choose Your Own Adventure books. None of it matched what SIV was meant to be. But that was not the hardest part. The real challenge came from somewhere else. The real struggle was that people in the creative world were too busy fighting for scraps to imagine a new kind of storytelling. Most artists never reach a stage. Most actors never land meaningful roles. Most writers never see their work on a screen. Theaters and television sets and film studios claim to celebrate creativity, but only a tiny percentage of artists ever make enough to call it a living. The rest survive on hope, second jobs, and the knowledge that the industry they love does not have room for them. That number is repeated so often it becomes invisible, but it should shock us. I saw it happen up close. I saw talented actors turned away because their face did not fit the story someone else had decided to tell. I saw writers dismissed because their ideas did not match the trend of the month. I saw performers who trained for years reduced to small background roles or told their voices were not commercial enough. They were told the industry was neutral and fair, when in truth it was narrow and guarded. This was the world I walked into when I founded 2B Acting. I wanted to create opportunities the mainstream ignored. I wanted to give actors and artists a chance to work, to be seen, to exist beyond the audition room where so many dreams quietly end. It was not grand. It was not glamorous. It was simply necessary. We produced plays because we were told we had no right to call ourselves producers. So we became producers. We moved to digital because theater doors would not open unless we could promise audiences we did not yet have. We built web series because television executives would not even take meetings. We experimented with games and apps because big tech would not let us publish anything that did not fit their narrow criteria. We kept going long after most companies our size would have given up, because the point was never to win their approval. The point was to prove that independence was possible. Every step of that journey taught me something. The gatekeepers were not interested in innovation. The platforms did not want us unless we brought numbers. The creative industries were modern in appearance and ancient in structure. But the artists, the audiences, the people hungry for something fresh were ready. They were waiting for someone to give them a different way to tell stories. That is the world SIV was created in. Not a world that welcomed it, but a world that needed it. A world where technology was moving fast and creativity was being left behind. A world where the biggest companies were preparing to automate storytelling and replace actors with algorithms. A world where human invention had to declare its independence before it was even born. SIV grew not from privilege or investment but from frustration and imagination. It grew because the big companies ignored the idea. It grew because the audiences had no voice. It grew because artists deserved more than the narrow corridor they were allowed to walk. You would think the creative world would welcome such an idea with open arms. After all, artists love innovation. They say this often, usually right before explaining why the industry cannot possibly change right now because ticket sales are down or because audiences are not ready. The truth is that most artists love innovation until it threatens the small slice of the pie they fought so hard to reach. And who can blame them? Fewer than 10% of artists earn enough from their art to live. Not comfortably. Not extravagantly. Just live. The remaining 90% spend their days auditioning, waiting tables, rewriting CVs, and explaining to family members that yes, acting is still the plan, while the same handful of names are invited in again and again. This is not just anecdotal misery. It is backed by numbers that would make a statistician weep. Research by the Creative Industries Policy and Evidence Center shows that more than 60% of creative workers earn below the national living wage. Equity reports that around 80% of actors are unemployed at any given moment. And the Office for National Statistics revealed that during the pandemic, creative workers lost income at twice the national rate. The stage may look glamorous, but behind it stands a queue of talented people who never get through the door. This is the landscape 2B acting was born into. Not because it was fashionable to be independent, but because the mainstream simply had no room for us. We created opportunities because the industry refused to create them for the people who needed them most. Our work went ignored, overlooked, or politely tolerated. But we kept going because necessity is a powerful motivator. Independence was not a branding exercise. It was survival. When artists have nowhere to go, you either create new spaces or watch creativity wither. And what is strange is that years on we can perhaps see why what we were saying and doing went unsupported. Big tech had no interest in a format that hands power to audiences and opportunities to artists. They prefer their content predictable, monetizable, and easily automated. Now, they are investing heavily into AI tools that can generate entire scenes without paying a single human being. They replace musicians with playlists and illustrators with AI-generated image models. They talk about democratizing creativity while quietly removing creators from the equation. Now I realize that independence is not optional. It is the only protection artists and audiences have left. If society wants creativity that is human, surprising, culturally rich and occasionally delightfully weird, then society must demand it. It must support the companies, the theater makers, the studios, and the innovators who are trying to create something different. Without that support, the future of video will be smooth, efficient, predictable, and utterly soulless. Creativity by AI and spreadsheet. SIV offers another path. A path where audiences become participants instead of passengers. A path where actors can perform roles that adapt and expand rather than disappear. A path where storytellers do not have to ask permission from an algorithm. A path where small creative organizations can build entire worlds without waiting for someone in a glass tower to bless the idea. This chapter of the story is not just about invention. It is about resistance. It is about creativity refusing to shrink. It is about the people who refuse to be passive, whether they are watching a silent pub television or fighting for a place in an industry that has forgotten how to make room. SIV exists because independence was the only way forward. And if we want a world where human creativity still matters, then independent is the way the rest of us must walk too. Chapter 2. The Birth of SIV. Ideas are strange creatures. Most appear for a moment, wave politely, and disappear before you even finish your cup of tea. A rare few linger a bit longer and try to convince you they are brilliant. And then there are the ideas that refuse to die. They tap at your shoulder while you are trying to sleep. They whisper to you while you are eating. They interrupt perfectly ordinary conversations with thoughts like, what if the audience could change this scene? These ideas do not wait for permission. They attach themselves to you and demand to become real. SIV was one of those annoyingly persistent ideas. I found myself sitting in cinemas imagining the day when the opening credits would carry a message that said something like, do not just watch. I would be trying to enjoy a film and instead find myself thinking about alternate perspectives, hidden scenes, and viewers shaping the experience. It was like being haunted by a future that refused to stay in the future. I knew I needed help. Or at least confirmation that I had not lost my mind. The first challenge was convincing anyone that this was not pure nonsense. Friends, colleagues, and well-meaning skeptics all had their own gentle ways of saying the same thing. They suggested I stick to normal video as if centuries of passive storytelling had been a golden age of excitement. If you want to understand how I reached this point, you need to know where I came from in terms of producing online video. SIV did not begin with technology. It began with frustration and a friend named Y. Back in the early 2000s, I was a chartered engineer with an honors degree in electrical and electronics engineering and a master's degree in power systems. Nothing in my professional life at the time suggested I would one day be running a theatre and media company. But curiosity has a habit of ignoring qualifications, and I had taken a B.Tech acting course at Thomas Danby College in Leeds to improve my playwriting and production skills. That is where I met Y. He was a talented East Asian actor who, after another demoralizing audition, told me that meaningful roles were practically impossible for him to get. In his words, most parts for people like me are delivery boys or background extras. He wanted to perform Shakespeare, not serve imaginary chow mein on screen. At first, I assumed he was exaggerating. Then he landed a role. A Chinese illegal immigrant in Phoenix Nights. That was when the penny dropped. Something was wrong with the system. As an engineer, my instinct was to fix the problem. So I created a forum website for actors. At the time, there were no UK-based online communities where actors could find casting calls and talk openly about the industry. Ours became a small but thriving space where creatives supported one another. Then, during one of our networking events, someone said something that changed my entire trajectory. You cannot tell actors how to get work because you are not a producer or a director. It was a fair argument. So we became producers. Our first stage play, A Woman's Choice, was at Hoxton Hall Theatre in London. We hired 7 actors, a director, and crew. The production was chaotic and courageous in equal measure. We learned more from those 5 nights than from any training course. And that play set the foundation for what 2B Acting would become. A creative company with one simple purpose: providing paid work opportunities for actors. Being creatively different is wonderful. Having absolutely no idea what you are doing is not so wonderful. After that first play, I went back to college part-time while working full-time. For years of studying the performing arts changed everything. It led to a Writers' Development Grant from Arts Council England and support from the Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust. In 2005, these efforts allowed me to formally establish 2B Acting and create a new kind of play. Something that addressed real issues and opened real doors. The result was Pimlico, a verse play about the mistreatment of illegal immigrants. We filled a small studio theatre 3 consecutive nights. The experience proved that small, independent productions could deliver paid work for artists and meaningful stories for audiences. More plays followed. The Cleaner, Full English, Spike, For the Love of Oranges. Each one pushed boundaries, stylistically, thematically, technically. We didn't just want to make theatre, we wanted to reinvent what theatre could be. But there was a growing problem. Theatres, especially in the UK, were difficult spaces to access unless you were part of what I call the Big Guys Club. As an independent company experimenting with new ideas, booking space was almost impossible unless we could guarantee ticket sales, and how could you guarantee an audience for something that had never been done before? It was around that time I realized that the very structure of traditional theatre, its dependence on physical space, and gatekeepers, funders, was limiting our creativity and, by extension, limiting paid opportunities for actors. So we looked elsewhere. By 2004, the digital world was waking up. YouTube was still only an idea whispered in tech corridors. Broadband was slowly replacing dial-up. Video on the internet was becoming possible. We picked up a camera not because filmmaking was the dream but because creation was the dream. We submitted our first web series to a film festival. They had no idea what to label it and in what category it should be placed in. It was not TV. It was not cinema. They called it digital media. And just like that, we had entered the digital media world by accident. In an attempt to make money, we made digital media, video, resources for schools. The idea was a good one, as we were told by some teachers, but distribution to schools was impossible unless you were one of the approved suppliers who had permission to sell into the education market. It would have cost too much for us to obtain the permission, so this option had to be dropped. Then came another light bulb moment. What if the internet could work like a television channel? We could create ongoing drama, release episodes weekly, offer membership access, and continually employ actors. That is how 2B Acting TV was born. Our first show for the channel was Today and Tomorrow, filmed entirely in my home. Filming was nothing like stage work. We had to learn cameras, sound, lighting, editing, compression, and how to deliver files small enough to stream over connections that would now struggle to load a photograph. Back then, we had to produce separate video files for Windows and Mac, and they couldn't be bigger than 600 by 400 pixels. Way before HD or 4K. Videos froze constantly, but we kept going. It was exhausting, exciting, and revolutionary, even if few people realized it at the time. We produced 16 episodes. That series became one of the first web series shown by broadcasters. It aired on Venus TV on Sky and on ITV local website. Of course, there was still the small matter of money. Where was it? It was needed to keep making the shows and to deliver on our commitment to always pay the artists involved professional rates. We tried to sell subscriptions to our channel, but then YouTube arrived in December 2005 and released a wider range of videos for free. Our paid subscription model was finished before it had even started. But we never gave up. When Apple launched the iStore and allowed developers to sell apps, we found a new path. The only problem was that Apple refused apps that simply played video. They needed something extra. So we created interactive video experiences. I remember the first app where viewers watched an episode of Today and Tomorrow and then snapshots from the video became a jumbled sliding picture puzzle that they then had to put back in the correct order. We released more than 30 apps of different variety. They brought in modest income and helped us keep going. Step by step, we were becoming independent. By 2014, 2B Acting had evolved into something unusual. A hybrid of theatre company, digital studio, and creative experiment. We had moved from stage lights to camera lenses, from scripts to code, and from ticket stubs to app downloads. Then came the idea that changed everything. It was June 2014 when Selective Interactive video arrived. The concept popped into my head quietly and inconveniently, like a neighbor who knocks on your door just as you sit down with dinner. The team was confused. We were a production company. The idea that a viewer could manipulate the content of a video while it played sounded like a science fiction hobby rather than something that would keep actors acting. Even the possibility of new income streams did not excite anyone. It felt to them like I had solved a problem no one had asked to be solved. Their doubt was understandable. SIV was not a business idea. It was a challenge to the way videos have been used since videos began. It questioned everything. It asked why the audience had no influence. Why a viewer could not shape a moment. Why we all obediently accepted one story as if the director's vision was a law of nature rather than a creative choice. I tried explaining it. That did not work. So I decided to show them. The first version of SIV was not created in a sleek studio or a state-funded lab. It was built in my living room, surrounded by cables, mugs, and a laptop that wheezed like it had asthma. There were no investors. No conference presentations. No certainty that any of this would work. I recruited an actor to help deal cards on video. She found it mildly entertaining. The idea that a simple card trick could be revolutionary was amusing at best. But after hours of trial and error, something happened. The viewer could choose the order of 3 cards before pressing play. Then the video dealt the cards in the chosen sequence as if the actor herself had rearranged time. It was a simple demonstration, but it meant everything. The viewer, not the director, was now in control. Here was live editing. Here was proof that video did not have to be passive. Every press of play can result in different content being shown. I was overwhelmed with excitement. Surely now, people would see the potential. But they didn't. To everyone else, it was just a short clip of someone dealing 3 cards. They couldn't see the invisible magic, the code, the timing, the creative possibility hidden beneath the surface. Ironically, that was the whole point. SIV looked just like any other video, and yet it wasn't. What I had created was proof that content could respond. But explaining that difference would become my next great battle. I didn't know then, but for the next 2 years, I would struggle to convince anyone that this quiet act of digital rebellion could change storytelling forever. This first SIV video still exists on InView, and it may have failed in being the explainer I wanted, but it did help me name the impossible. And a lesson to learn is that naming the impossible is the first step to making it real. Chapter 3. Naming the impossible. By this point, SIV had become the kind of idea that refused to behave. It was no longer a scribble on a napkin or a stray thought drifting through my head on the drive home. It had grown into something living, something with a heartbeat. I sometimes felt it breathing behind me, tapping my shoulder whenever I dared focus on anything else. Some ideas politely wait their turn. SIV was not one of those ideas. It wanted to exist. It demanded it. The idea itself sounded ridiculous whenever I tried to say it aloud. Video that changes based on who is watching. Stories that adapt. Narratives that breathe. It sounded like a pitch from someone who had enjoyed too much whiskey and optimism, yet the more I thought about it, the more it felt inevitable. I could not shake it. Even after creating the first working SIV, I faced a huge problem. How do you explain something revolutionary without sounding ridiculous? I needed a single phrase. Something short, punchy, and simple enough to describe what made SIV different from every other kind of video. But every idea I tried either already existed or sounded like I'd swallowed a tech dictionary. Interactive video? Taken. Choose your own story content? Embarrassing. Variable responsive storytelling? Utter nonsense. What I wanted was something that sounded real, not sci-fi, not marketing fluff, but confident enough to suggest that what we were doing wasn't a gimmick. It needed to make people curious, not confused. From the dream world to the real world came the moment of clarity. The difference, I realized, was selection. With a normal video, all the selections are made for you. By the director, the editor, the camera operator. Every shot, every angle, every cut, every sound. Decided. The viewer just sits there and absorbs it. Interactive video allowed some choice, but it was clunky, limited, and predictable because of predetermined selections locked into the video. SIV, however, made selection and interaction variables. 2 creative forces that, when woven together properly, could make stories unpredictable, alive, and personal. I played with the words for a while: interactive selective video, video with selection and interaction, selectable video experience, none rolled off the tongue quite right. Then from another dream the name came. Selective Interactive Video. SIV. Short. Sharp. Serious. It sounded like something that deserved respect. Something people could say aloud without cringing or feeling like they were quoting science fiction. And just like that, SIV had an identity, the first solid step in turning a stubborn, chaotic idea into something that might one day make sense. But naming it didn't solve the bigger problem. It simply gave me something to chase and a new set of ways to get it wrong. And here's where things started to go off course. I took the name Selective Interactive Video far too literally, and that led me down a technical rabbit hole I didn't know existed. To implement SIV, I made 3 assumptions that would, in hindsight, prove spectacularly wrong. I believed people wanted to convert their videos into SIVs. I believed YouTube was the perfect partner. I believed video editors would embrace this new freedom. All three beliefs were as mistaken as thinking you can train a cat to fetch. Those ideas shaped the first version of SIV, and, as it turned out, shaped its early struggles too. I imagined a world of SIV creators. People who could take existing videos and transform them into interactive experiences through an online tool. So I built one. A sleek online portal that mimicked the look of the editing software of the time. Here's how it worked. You'd paste in a YouTube link, load the video into our converter, add overlays, buttons, and triggers, then generate your own SIV link. Instead of sending a YouTube video link, you sent your SIV link for them to share. In theory, it was genius. In reality, it was like trying to explain jazz to someone who'd only ever listened to dial tones. Building the SIV creator turned into a never-ending cycle of, wouldn't it be cool if? Every new idea meant a new function, and every new function meant another month of coding, debugging, and explaining. We added overlays, clickable hotspots, filters, sound control, subtitles, timers, jumps, swaps, transitions, you name it. If an editor could dream it, we tried to build it. Before long, we weren't creating stories anymore, we were creating software. And we weren't filmmakers, we were coders, trainers, tech support, and the world's most confused salespeople. The biggest issue? Nobody, and I mean nobody, knew what a SIV was, so they didn't know why they needed one, and more importantly how to create one, even when handed a SIV creator. We'd often end up making SIVs for clients just so they could understand its benefits. Even our target audience, the video editors, weren't convinced. Why not just add all this stuff in post, they'd ask, quite reasonably. And they were right. Their editing tools were comfortable, predictable, and, most importantly, didn't crash when the internet hiccuped. Because, oh yes, slow internet was another killer. Back then, you couldn't play a video without buffering. SIVs that relied on split-second triggers ended up mistimed, broken, or completely incomprehensible. For example, our clever, live editing looked more like live confusion as the videos jumped around at incorrect places during playback. Then came the hardest lesson of all. Monetization. How can SIV bring in a regular income? We launched a free version of the SIV creator to attract users and lock the advanced functions behind a paid plan. It sounded sensible. It wasn't. The free SIVs people made were atrocious: banners that blocked the video content, giant click me buttons, pop-ups asking you to visit our website or watch this other video. Worse, viewers had no idea these things were clickable, so they ignored them. The SIVs looked like ordinary videos, and the interactivity went completely unnoticed. The irony was painful: the invisible magic of SIV was so invisible that no one realized it was there. To add to our troubles, we were now knee-deep in tech, business models, and confusion, miles away from the spark that had started this in the first place. SIV was supposed to make storytelling more human, not turn storytellers into software engineers. So, we pulled the plug on the configurator. And then, in what was now becoming true 2B acting fashion, we did what we did best: made another wrong decision. Our next bright idea. If people didn't want to make SIVs, we'd make them for them. We called them custom SIVs. Bespoke, ready-made interactive videos we could sell directly to businesses. 15 prototypes later, we had everything from interactive reports to property layouts, promotional tools, and interactive video storybooks. It sounded smart, professional, grown-up even. But it was also completely soulless. We were no longer storytellers. We were salespeople pitching creativity as a productivity tool. We went to networking events, spoke to business groups, pretended to know what synergy meant, and tried to sound excited about SIV for business. But deep down, we didn't care about dashboards, data, or lead generation. We cared about art. About human connection. About stories. Soon, our meetings were all Excel sheets, sales targets, and strategic roadmaps. The spark had gone. SIV wasn't meant to be boring, but that's exactly what we'd made it. Selling something you don't love is exhausting. And trying to convince other people to love something you've stopped believing in, well, that's soul-destroying. We were proving SIV could do the possible when its whole purpose was to show the impossible. And yet, somehow, even that realization wasn't enough to change our direction. Not yet. Because just around the corner, in a twist of pure irony, we made one final, glorious misstep. The Automated Concierge System, ACS, for hotels. The ACS SIV was born out of desperation, the kind that only a frustrated creative team can generate. We'd drifted too far into spreadsheets and sales pipelines, and this was my attempt to lure everyone back to what SIV was really about: creativity with purpose. Research had shown that most hotels, except for the ultra-luxury ones with chandeliers bigger than my living room, had quietly fired their human concierges to save money. A tragedy, really, but also an opportunity. If hotels wouldn't pay for people, perhaps they'd pay for SIVs pretending to be people. With more than 250,000 hotels worldwide, the potential was enormous. We imagined a digital concierge powered by SIV, a system that could guide guests through everything from checking in, finding the bar, ordering room service, to exploring local attractions. It could even upsell the spa package they didn't know they needed. Better still, it could do all of this with actors, finally giving performers a starring role in hospitality. They'd appear as the friendly faces of each hotel, welcoming guests, explaining safety procedures, promoting events, and even showing up as projectograms or holograms in lobbies. It was like turning every hotel into a mini entertainment complex, the cinema of SIV. The team loved that idea. Not just because it was smart business, but because it was a platform on which more digital productions could be shown. We imagined every hotel having its own soap drama that guests would come back just so they didn't miss the next episode. That could become a really large outlet for artistic creativity. Basically, giving every hotel their own SIV platforms, turning them into entertainment hubs. And for a while, it all looked possible. We got our foot in the door with several hotels. This was no small feat, since hotels are, we discovered, notoriously difficult creatures for ordinary suppliers to sell to. They love innovation, as long as it comes from approved suppliers or people they know. We were therefore excited, and then came what I now call the endless proving process. We met teams, and then more teams, and then the teams under those teams. We explained the ACS so many times I started to dream in PowerPoint. Each meeting ended with a new request, a new test, or a new delay. They wanted proof of concept, proof of scalability, proof of future-proofing. And the real kicker? Some of the ideas we'd shared during these marathon meetings started to pop up elsewhere. The same hotels adopting suspiciously similar, digital, features from other suppliers. Flattery, they say, is the highest form of theft. Still, the ACS SIV was a great idea, and it remains part of our portfolio today. But by 2017, it was clear that we were suffocating under the weight of business logic. The creative spark that built SIV needed oxygen, and the only way to find it was to go back to the stage. So, led by our revived creative team, SIV made its way from hotel lobbies to theater seats. And armed with SIV, we brought something different with us. On the 4th of November 2017, during our play, For the Love of Oranges, 2B Acting asked audiences to keep their phones on. Yes, on, and use the InView Theatre app during the show. Viewers received silent in-seat videos and clickable prompts that extended the onstage story. Less than a year later, on the 11th of May 2018, the BBC Philharmonic proudly announced that they would invite audiences to keep their mobile phones switched on during their upcoming season. International Arts Manager covered it as a bold first. Bold first? Not quite. It was rather satisfying when Richard Horseman, the culture vulture, the same journalist who reviewed For the Love of Oranges, wrote to the BBC to correct them. After all, our SIV had beaten them to it. And that was the beauty of it. SIV wasn't just an online phenomenon. It could thrive in live spaces, connecting audiences and performers in ways no traditional production could. That moment reminded me of something important. SIV was never meant to imitate technology. It was meant to challenge it. Big tech likes to pretend they are the guardians of creativity, but they only celebrate innovation when they own it. SIV grew outside their walls, and that made it a threat. We had finally returned to our purpose. We were no longer proving what was possible. We were inventing the impossible. And it felt like the beginning again. Chapter 4. Projectograms. Let us begin with the obvious question that everyone asks the moment they hear the word. What exactly is a projectogram? To answer that, we need to go back a little. When the automated concierge SIV project collapsed under the weight of hotel politics and politely stolen ideas, there was one shiny obsession we refused to abandon. Holograms. They had been part of our fantasy for the ACS, and frankly they were simply too exciting to let go of. We could not squeeze them into the 2017 play, but the moment someone uttered the words comedy monologue, I knew this was our chance to bring the dream back. I had grown tired of explaining SIV to people who insisted on staring at it like it was algebra. We needed something loud and simple. Something that proved SIV was not only practical but entertaining. Something that said creativity could thrive outside the sacred, locked doors of traditional venues. And that is how we arrived at the idea of taking actors into pubs. For most actors, performing in pubs is not the dream. In fact, if an actor is performing in a pub, something in their career has usually gone horribly wrong. Yet for us, the plan was perfect. We wanted to create a new performance circuit. A new route for artists to get paid. After all, the reality in the arts is brutal. According to Equity, only around 8% of actors make a sustainable living from performance. The rest scrape by on part-time jobs, tourism gigs, and hope. Theaters often pay below living wage, TV roles go to the same handful of names, and film opportunities are guarded like treasure. Why pubs? I remember our first play, where at the last minute before the play started, in our attempt to get an audience to attend, we went to the pub across the road that was full. Pubs attract people. So yes, pubs. They were the forbidden territories where art rarely goes because the economics make it laughable. Once you add travel costs, performance fees, equipment, and logistics, you would need to fill the bar with ticket buyers and their visiting relatives to break even. The math simply laughed in our faces. Then came the light bulb. Or rather, the screen bulb. The team finally said the words I had been waiting for. This only works with SIV. We would film the actors performing their monologues, then use SIV to project them into pubs as full-height performing figures. Not actors. Not screens. Something in between. Something more alive than video but less complicated than a touring theater company. It was the start of a new genre. This was the birth of the projectogram. Of course, when we went searching for hologram technology, we discovered something disappointing. The only affordable options were enormous fixed units designed for shopping malls. They were about as portable as a washing machine full of bricks. Definitely not suited for a Yorkshire pub crawl. But during that research we realized that holograms were really nothing more than clever projection tricks. Smoke, mirrors, angled glass. All theatrics. So we improvised with close-up rear projection on a full-height portable screen. From the right angle, it looked like someone was standing right in front of you. A half hologram, half projection hybrid. A projectogram. Of course, I then had to explain on a BBC radio interview that a projectogram is not just a video on a wall. The magic is in the control. With SIV, the projection could react. It could change. It could even respond to a heckler. Imagine insulting a performer, then watching their projected twin talk back with a perfectly timed line. That is the kind of foolishness that gives a show life. We built interactivity into the performances as well. Audiences voted on their phones for the monologue they wanted replayed. SIV handled it automatically. It made the audience part of the show, not just watchers. Once we sorted the tech, everything moved quickly. The Royal Hyde Park pub in Leeds kindly offered us a development venue. In 3 months we went from idea to premiere and even charged a small ticket fee, wanting to prove that the concept could capture a paying audience. Then came opening night. If enthusiasm alone could power a projector, we would have lit up the whole pub. Sadly, enthusiasm is not measured in lumens. The screen we had built the day before was optimistic. The projector struggled. The room lights were too bright. And halfway through, the internet performed its favorite trick and froze the performance. From behind the equipment table, I watched our actors pause mid-sentence like very well-dressed mannequins. But the audience thought it was part of the act. They laughed. They clapped. To this day I still think it was divine intervention on behalf of struggling artists. Somehow, despite every obstacle, the audience loved it. And that was the moment I realized something important. This was not a gimmick. This was a doorway. A journalist came over afterwards and said something that has stayed with me. You have just made it possible to bring live performance to places that never get it. This hit me harder than the technical failures. Because the truth is this. Around 40% of towns in the UK have no dedicated theatre. Rural communities often travel long distances to see a single show. Touring theatre companies have declined over the past decade due to rising costs. Arts Council England reports that independent touring has dropped significantly in rural areas because it is financially unviable. And small venues in deprived areas rarely get visits from established theatre companies. Projectograms could change that. Artists could suddenly appear in places they could never physically reach. Villages, community centres, small pubs, social clubs, venues that cannot afford a cast of actors and stage crew. Now a single projector and screen could deliver an entire performance, complete with interactivity and personality. And so, fueled by the success of the pilot, we decided to fix the problems and take the comedy monologue on a touring run across Yorkshire pubs. This is where reality slapped us again. We fixed the freezing issues by allowing projectograms to run locally while staying connected to the internet for interactivity. It took more swearing and more trial and error than any of us would like to admit. Browsers do not like doing what we needed them to do. But we did it. We bought a portable PA system because relying on the pub sound equipment was like relying on a toaster to perform brain surgery. Wrong connectors, no power, mystery buttons, manuals lost to history. Never again. We even ordered a full human-height portable screen from the United States. The first arrived broken. The second refused to stay upright. The third finally stood its ground and we celebrated as if we had just won a minor war. Technically, we had. We added a remote controller that let us manipulate the actors on screen in response to the audience. Pre-recorded heckle responses made the projectograms feel more alive. We auditioned new actors and expanded the catalogue. We were ready. Then came 3 revelations. The first. Pubs had no idea what we were talking about. Projectogram performance? We got blank stares. We got confused questions. Eventually we told them it was a kind of live stand-up but with video. That seemed to calm them. The second. Marketing the show was almost impossible. Try explaining a projectogram comedy monologue performance in a single sentence. Most people tuned out by word 3. The third. Often, no one came. We once performed to absolutely no one except the barman who offered us sympathy but no free crisps or beer. By measurable standards, the projectogram tour was a complete failure. Yet emotionally, creatively and defiantly, it was one of the most important things we had ever done. It proved something vital. Technology can become a weapon for artists. A tool that breaks open the locked doors of traditional venues. A chance for performers to earn money from multiple places at once. A way to bring art to the forgotten spaces where culture rarely goes. Projectograms became the scrappy early prototype of a future where performers can appear anywhere. A future where creativity is not confined to buildings that many communities cannot afford to access. A future where technology helps art travel. We believe projectograms will evolve into full holographic actors powered by AI and SIV. Receptionists, trainers, guides, storytellers, teachers, translators. And yes, stage performers responding to audiences in real time. Still, after we licked our wounds from the projectogram tour, I didn't expect the team to bounce back so enthusiastically. Yet there they were, full of ideas, energy drinks, and unshakable belief that SIV's failure had nothing to do with the technology itself. The problem isn't SIV, someone said. It's the audience. They just don't know they love it yet. Hard to argue with that logic. So, armed with lessons learned and faith intact, we decided to do what any reasonable creative team would do after a costly failure: we doubled down. We boldly went back to where we had gone before, and threw most, if not all, of our remaining finances into hiring studio space. Again. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that sometimes the only way forward is straight through the same wall, but with more space, green screen.
Thank you for listening to this sample of the audiobook. You can listen to the full audiobook when you join InView, or you can buy the book from the Amazon store. This recording is copyrighted, 2B Acting Limited. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, including photocopy, recording, or any information storage and retrieving system, or performed without permission in writing from 2B Acting Limited.